going on, guys? This is Carl with the Racerred channel. I'm out here riding the mighty DRZ400, and it is running smooth just like it always does. I'm out here running a good heat cycle and running some fuel through it. I definitely don't like doing carburetor work, especially on this bike, so I'm trying to make sure I keep gas cycled through it, and then I'm gonna add some more non-ethanol fuel to this bike because it's probably not gonna get ridden a whole lot these next few months. I think it's funny that these stabilizers have been the thing to use for so long, but I was just watching a video about stabilizers, and it tested them, and it basically showed that fuel stabilizer does almost nothing. It just makes it like a different color. It's still, the fuel still goes bad. The ethanol in the fuel goes bad. If you're running straight fuel, it won't go bad, but if you're running ethanol in the fuel, even if you add stabilizer, it's not going to do a whole lot. Kind of cracks me up though, like thinking about who's in charge, especially when it comes to companies. Like, who was the guy who said that was working? Who put it out to the public saying, like, hey, this stuff actually works? It should be some kind of requirement, you would think. And I also think that way with big entities like the Federal Reserve, in charge of something huge like the U.S. economy. It's like, who's in charge? Who's making these gigantic decisions? Because usually, if it's one person, it's usually not one person, it's a collection of people. But there is usually one main person, and I just don't think that most people are trustworthy for a job like that. It's like, hey, how's it going? I'm in charge. I just got this bag of money from this guy who says he's a Chinese spy or something. He said if I told you guys to raise interest rates, he would give it to me, and he did. I think that, a lot of these companies and organizations are so susceptible to issues like that, and mostly when it comes to integrity, there are some pretty big holes. I think that way for every single organization, when it comes to environmental stuff, especially, like wildlife specialists. I was watching this thing where they were talking about how this fox had run over to the water and basically just grabbed a fish out of it, and grabbed a salmon, and he ran off. He was eating it, and he was making a big deal of this behavior, like, oh, we didn't know that this behavior occurred. We didn't realize that this type of animal would actually fish for its food, and they're going on and on, and they do that. They overanalyze these situations constantly. And what you have to realize is that nature will adapt. It will eat. If it's hungry, it's gonna find a way. Of course it's gonna go grab a fish if it sees a fish. But that's the problem with these intellectuals who are often in charge of things like wildlife. Of course they're gonna say riding a motorcycle is going to kill a bunch of cows or wildlife up in the mountains. They don't really know a whole lot. They haven't spent the time out here to really be able to adapt and have that common sense. But I think a lot of people in charge are that way, definitely. I think a lot of times when we think of places or entities, we think of something higher than human. When you think of the Federal Reserve, you think of the Federal Reserve. You're not thinking of a person. You're not thinking of, oh, this is run by people. Or when you think of fish and game entities or environmental protection agencies or anything like that, you think of it as an entity. But I think what people should do is think of it as people, because there's a dude behind there that probably got that job straight out of college. A lot of times they will talk about all these environmental impacts of combustion engines and things like that. Meanwhile, we're shooting through space with meteors passing by us like very, very closely. And the probability of one of those ending our planet long before any environmental man-caused BS that they're talking about is so likely. And that's not to say like we should be careless by any means. I think that we can affect the environment. We don't want to be setting off nukes all the time, especially in our water. We don't want to be, poisoning the oceans. Which, by the way, the U.S. does not poison the oceans in comparison to the rest of the planet. These third world countries literally drive their dump trucks up to the ocean and dump all the garbage in. But I don't think that we should be doing things that are going to compromise our water sources and things. Just, use a little common sense. But I do find it strange that it's always in the news, this catastrophic type thing, like when Australia was on fire, which was pretty normal. Or when they were talking about how the Amazon was on fire, and literally no more of the Amazon burned than normal every year. Like, how many times are they going to do this before people open their eyes and say, hey, I'm pretty sure anything in the news is just BS. Like, it's like listening to somebody who's just a pathological liar and they never tell the truth. It's like, okay, well, you've lied to me constantly. Like, I'm not going to believe anything you say at this point. My point with all this is, don't listen to the experts. Whatever you do in life, do not listen to the experts unless you do your own research and figure out whether or not they are actually telling you the truth, especially when it comes to what you hear on the news. And, because people are so corruptible. Think about the political climate in the U.S., and the minds of these politicians can be changed with a bag of money at any moment. And people are very corruptible. And it's just, they could push something tomorrow, and they could basically say it's life and death, catastrophe coming, it's life or death. You've got to give us your money. And that's basically what they did with environmental stuff. Give us your money and give us the power. And they did a great job of getting both of those things for that. I made the point of these agencies and these companies having somebody in charge. You look at Pfizer and the demons in charge. And it's always been the case, like with these pharmaceutical companies. They are demons. These people basically do shady deals. Anyways, they want to keep on making those drugs, and they want to keep selling them. And they will do anything to do that. Stocks are going up for those companies like crazy. They just skyrocketed during the so-called pandemic. There was a virus that came out and started to make people sick. All of a sudden, these pharmaceutical companies are angels. They're not demons, they're angels. No, they're still demons. Which, by the way, there were 0 flu cases during this whole virus. That should raise some red flags right there. But you watch China in their news, they had people laying on the street dead. That's a real pandemic. That's a pandemic. But it was fake. It was all fake. They faked the entire thing. Why? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Why? It's insane, and it's fear porn. It's all fear porn. All of these lies have one truth, and that is that they are trying to keep you scared. Trying to keep you scared and trying to keep you paying money and relinquishing power. That was quite the rant of it just kind of, it all is related though when you talk about entities, companies. Spot out here that they closed down for some weed that grew on the side hills. And I really think that people need to consider the motivations. I saw this thing where they were talking about river health and stuff like that, and they were saying how people stacking rocks and moving rocks, that was killing private property. Anyways, they were talking about how people stacking rocks was killing wildlife and all of this, and they show a picture of this salamander upside down, dead in the water. And they basically use this to say that, we're taking the salamander's rocks, displacing them where they can't hide under them, so predators are getting to them. Well, if that's the case in this picture, then why was the salamander not eaten? Their logic tends to break down very quickly. I'm pretty sure that animals just die. And there are things we can do to make that happen, but let's just face it, like some species, especially, a lot of times we aren't at fault. Lots of species of animals have died. It's not something that you need to change necessarily. Some of them just can't survive. We're not going to kill the entire ecosystem if one species dies off. There's no way that is going to happen. That is definitely not true. Lots of species have died in the past, and the environmentalists always want to tell you that the world's going to end if this particular bug or animal dies, and it's never true. There's a coyote. Anyways, guys, don't believe the experts and think for yourselves. And that's not to say don't believe anybody, but look into stuff a little bit before you make your decision. And don't turn against your fellow people because they're not wearing a piece of cloth on their face or because they're not getting injected with unknown substances. These things were really highlighting a big group of people in the United States that were willing to turn against their neighbors. And it was turning against their neighbors for absolutely no legitimate reason. And so it's really important to look into stuff fully and just don't trust blindly what your leaders are telling you and what they're saying. Look into stuff a little bit. Anyways, catch you on the next one. Peace. There's my home down there.